After yesterday, I started thinking more about writing, and then the writing I've done, and I realized that I've never had any opportunity to really share it with anyone or talk about it. It's mostly just stuck around in my files and my Google Docs and things like that, and when I do share it with people, I get AI generated responses back, or just like a quick little, oh, it was neat, and then no further detail, and and no real indication that the person ever read it. My one very good friend, that person is great, and there are so many areas where that, really there, and stuff like that. But if I so much as step outside a single degree of that person's personal interests, complete deactivate, just loss. The person's gone. They'll start scrolling on YouTube, and like make it very clear, like all the light goes out of that person's eyes, and they will just right in front of you just start ignoring whatever it is, and just start looking around, and it's like. Because in the past, I tried to share some of that writing with the person, and the person would be like, would tell me like, "Oh yeah, I read 2 pages," and then I got distracted, or then that was it was a little too much for me, and I just had to get up and go walk around, or it'll be 3 days, and I'll ask like, "Oh, how far did you get?" And the guy was like, "Well, out of your 10 pages, I only read 1." It's like it was. I needed to take a break and go do other things, and I was like, it's not even that long, and other things too. Like when I share like music, if it's not something the person can immediately recognize and kind of get that dopamine hit out of, then the person will. It's like a 5-minute long, music video, not like a music video, but video of music, and the person will send like, "Oh, neat," or "That was cool," 20 seconds later. There is literally that amount of time in, you're still in the intro. There is no way that you got to the good part. And I do know that my one very good friend that will just watch the first 10 seconds, get distracted or completely lose all focus, and immediately just turn it off and go to something else. It's so irritating to me. But I do like the person, and there are plenty of areas where we do intersect and things like that, but specifically, if I go out of my way to engage that one very good friend in their interests and the zone of their stuff, I will say my one very good friend has gotten better about it over the years. Before, I would just get like a "oh neat" or "wow," and then that was it. If I brought up anything that I was interested in and things like that, the person will at least try to engage in some common ground or something now, but it's not particularly impressive. But that's also why you shouldn't, I guess, rely on one person to fulfill you in every area, You meet lots of people with lots of different interests and things like that, and very rarely you'll meet a person who likes the fact that you like something, and they don't need to like it themselves to go out of their way to support you and engage with you and stuff like that. I mentioned this in a previous journal, but I saw someone who found that they found friends who, even though they didn't even watch the show that they were interested in, or even liked the genre, they knew that person liked it so much, and they went out to to support them because they liked the person that much. That sounds wonderful. And I try to do that. I do that for my one very good friend. That person has a lot of things that I am not personally a fan of at all. So many things, but then I'll go out of my way to be like, oh, tell me about it. Or, here, I saw this thing is a thing that you like. Let's watch that together. Or I saw that thing came out. Have you seen it? Oh, let's do that. Or here, I'll come help you with writing a section of this. What have you got so far? And then I'll help him. I'll help that person with I'll help him out with coming up with something, brainstorming, or like, oh, tell me about it. That's an interesting idea. Let's go through it together, and then we'll go through it, and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. What about this part? And who's that? And what's this mean? Or I'll like, oh, I saw you this thing you like, release this here. I'll buy you that piece of merchandise that you like. There you go. Or I'll show up to when that very good friend is doing something that involves that thing, that kind of thing. Because I realize that even if you don't like something, there's so much potential to learn something from it. It's like something completely out of your wheelhouse. I mean, it's like seeing different cuisine, It's like eating pizza all the time, and then you go try some Italian food. You're not going to necessarily become an Italian fan, but you're going to expand your taste and your palate, But I learned a long time ago that not to expect the other person to do, it's not a matter of reciprocation or anything like that. Everyone's going to be different. And you can't force other people. Doesn't mean you can't be friends, but it just means you can't expect that out of that person. And, you have a person with their specific interests, and they're not going to care about, and if something of yours that doesn't intersect with what they like or what they're interested in, They'll give you 5 seconds and then they'll turn it off. Or, you try to go to a place and then show them something, and then they immediately pull out their phone and start playing mobile games and completely ignoring whatever it is. And it just irritates me to no end. Or just like, you see the light go out of their eye and start shifting their head around, just looking for anything else to distract them. Or you see that they're just gone, like mentally. They've just floated into a different headspace and are just thinking other thoughts now that are completely drowning out the surrounding. Ugh, I don't want to be bitter. That's why I'm bringing all this up, just to get it out. I'm sure everyone who has friends has something that just gets on their nerves. It may not be this. It may be something else. It may be minor. And you know what? Maybe lots of people don't have things about their friends. Or in my case, friend. My one single friend that just... And that's the thing. When you have one single, you get really intimated with all the different facets and things to be irritated about. And you learn the most successful route to interaction versus completely losing the person and just like, I know if I keep trying to expect this out of you, I'm just going to get bitter. So I'm just not gonna I'm just gonna leave that be and focus whatever I talked to you about to like what I know is gonna work. Oh. Well, usually what I do for myself is that I try to be the kind of friend that I wish I try to be the kind of friend that I wish that I could find, but I have to recognize that those expectations, I can't expect them out of people, and I can't expect, I can't put demands on the other person. It can't be perfect according to my imagination of it. The worst part is knowing that it exists out there somewhere, that really does happen. But no, I do have a great one friend. even if there are those few spots, and that person has gotten better about it over time. That person has grown since then, and it's better. It definitely is better. But I say all that to say, it's nice when there's like two great big sources for writing. Let me write down a note that I just had in my head. Let me write down themes. There we go. But two like big sources for writing is, one is getting interested in the interests of other people, even if it's just like you're not gonna become a fan or anything, but just exposing yourself to that other cuisine. It doesn't mean you're gonna frequent that restaurant every single day, or eat the food there all the time, or things like that. But it does, you get to expand your palate and incorporate more flavors, and see what someone else finds special about what you're talking about. And I think the difference between me and my one very good friend is just how we view other interests, storytelling and storytelling wise, and narratively, and just like presentationally. For me, when I look at something, I'm not looking at the okay, let me give a good example. My friend liked the idea of white space from Sonic Generations, the whole but when my friend liked it, they described it as like the whole scene, if that makes any sense. The characters at the birthday party, the specific characters, the setup of the other dimension, specifically like how they designed it in The Thing, and the premise of them getting thrown into portals with the time eater. And when they describe how they like it, they just they pluck out the whole scene, if that makes any sense. Almost like the best way they can describe it is basically as if they found a clip on YouTube, sent it to you, and then they're like, I want this. Let's try this for our story, or something like that. And then I'll think about it, and I'll be like, well, and I won't say this to that person up front. I'll just be thinking it like time travel and all that doesn't really work for our story. And there's a lot of things here, but I think the thing I recognize is that when I look at this, it's not necessarily that my friend likes the entire thing and wants to just copy paste, export the entire thing one-to-one. It's that there's underlying concepts in this thing that my friend is attracted to, but doesn't know how to single them out, if that makes any sense, or distill them from what the creators of the thing have put it into, if that makes any sense. And I discussed it with the friend, and it was true. Like, it wasn't the whole scene that the person liked. It was the concept of like a liminal space with voided out areas. It was the core concept of characters getting scattered throughout a space, like the story idea we had couldn't do time travel, but it could do other spaces and dimensions and things like that. It couldn't just be like, Sonic birthday party, all the characters, but it wasn't even that my friend necessarily liked all of that. It's that there were specific things that were appealing within that greater scene that we then went through, and I talked my friend through each part and was like, is it that part? And they'll be like, yeah, actually it is that specific part of that. So by the end we had distilled out parts that weren't actually needed, or the person wasn't actually that interested into, and in the end what we ended up was just like core concepts that could then be used, and it carried over the same feeling, but now it was our own. It was our own thing now. The concept of characters getting scattered throughout a space, that space having recreations of areas. But then we went through, like, there are ways that's a very vague concept. It doesn't have to be time travel. There are lots of reasons that a space can resemble some place where people have been. It could be memory related. It could be a simulation. It could be that someone has physically reconstructed these things as like mimics, or it could be actual like teleportation across the place, or it could be like a dimension where those excuse me a pocket dimension with those kinds of structures in it, or there are lots of ways to build a body on that core concept of like characters separated throughout a space, and they have to reunite, and it's in another dimension, and they have to like fill out areas and restore the color to them. You can do a lot with those very basic core concepts, and I think that's part of what causes someone to like look at something, say, oh, I'm looking at the whole package, I'm looking at the scene, as I'm not interested, attention off, that kind of thing. Whereas, when my friend shows me something, I just like start staring at it, and I'll look at it, and I'll be like, okay, what's going on under this whole scene? I'm not a fan of the overall thing, but there are what are the inner, what's a core concept here that could be really fascinating, because there's definitely something here that is there's definitely something here that has an appeal, that is for me something I can take away from this and be like, you know what, that's a really interesting core concept, even if the rest of it isn't to my taste. Let me like, oh, okay, or hey, that one joke was pretty funny, something like that, sort of deconstructing it. So I mean, that's part of why I can say that's part of why I do enjoy that my friend enjoys something. I'm there because the person enjoys it, and I want to see what are some ideas in this that make it kind of what it is. What's something interesting about this thing? And I understand not everyone is necessarily in that mindset and things like that. Everyone sees things a different way, and depending on, character and personality, they interact with it or treat it differently. Like, and each comes with its own pros and cons. Like, for me, I've had to learn how to zoom out more often and see something as a whole. Like, I'm looking at a cabinet right now, but the first thing my eyes notice is the places where the pieces were glued together. Like, my vision isn't immediately on the entire cabinet. My vision begins with, like, I'm looking at the seams where the carpenters cut out the bits and glued them together, and I'm I'm looking at that, starting at that level. Or when I look at this door here, my eye immediately focuses on the texture of the rings in the wood. Or, like, another thing that happens to me is when I watch a movie, even before I did a lot of learning about film stuff, my mind always for me, my mind has a hard time getting immersed in something. I'm always, because it's constantly thinking about the fact that this is artificial, and my brain is like looking at every little decision that the person made to try and make it immersive and interactive. But I'm not like stepping back to take it as the world that it is. I'll listen to a show, and instead of hearing a character, I'm hearing a voice actor. It's like, for me, it's like, I'm not listening to so-and-so talk. I'm listening to the voice actor voicing a drawn image created by an animator who had to spend time in a studio. My brain starts at that level and works its way outward, and I have to train myself to actually like see it as the story that it is. Another thing is, like, when I play video games, my mind is always aware of the TV that is surrounding the game, if that makes any sense. I'm always aware of the flatness of the screen and the little details going on. I wish I could become more immersed in whatever I'm looking at, but the whole time I'm just thinking about the person who wrote the line that the voice actor is saying in the drawn animated character, if that makes any sense. Like, instead of hearing like those are the character's words, I'm just thinking those are the words of a guy who was sitting in an office or a studio, who wrote them on a piece of paper, which were then given to a person who then voice acted them. In a way, though, that is very useful. I think about that a lot when you encounter a show where there's a character who's supposed to be like beyond humanity or enlightened or lectures humans or things like that, and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't a real character. This is a human writing what they imagine an enlightened character is, but ultimately it comes from a human place or point of view. So is it really, it's not really exactly enlightened, it's just a human's opinion of what is better than human. And I don't know where the line of arrogance versus just being imaginative is on that. Sometimes it's just raw arrogance, and other times it's just imagination, trying to imagine a better condition. But it's like this isn't an alien, this isn't some enlightened being, this isn't some creature. It's like whenever I read those things about like, oh yeah, aliens invaded and they're telling us that we're destroying the planet and that they want to invite us into their space thing and so on and so on, and I'm just like, a human wrote that. A person, a human being is the one who wrote such things. And this isn't an enlightened alien being. This is an actor wearing makeup who was given lines written by a guy in an office somewhere whose idea of what an enlightened creature is this. But you're ultimately just listening to more human words, if that makes any sense. I'm not trying to like put that down, but I'm just thinking about that idea. In part ways, it's very useful to me because one thing I really, really dislike is being manipulated. I despise being manipulated. And I think part of that has to do with my upbringing, which probably is what carried over into how I watch and play things. It's like, I really dislike when a show or a game or anything thinks it's easy to win over one on my emotions just by playing a piece of music or showing me a similar piece of imagery, you know? It really does bother me. So my brain is just like always hyper aware of the process going on and monitoring and figuring out how everything has been constructed and imagining the person behind what is being said and trying to imagine what the actor is thinking as they're trying to say these lines or as they're doing these actions. It's only been a rare few times in my life where I've really encountered characters where I was like, this is the character. I don't see an actor here. I see the character in front of me. I see the story. That's happened only a few times. Very, very rarely. And then there are some where I just can't. I just see the actor the entire time. One of those is certain moments in Deep Space Nine with Alexander Siddig. He has a very specific range, and if he steps even an inch outside of that range, it is just the tackiest thing. And I just see him. I just see Alexander Siddig trying and not quite nailing it. Pretty much any time that Julian Bashir has to be angry, he starts talking like this. I've had quite enough of you. And messing around with... I've had enough of this foolishness, Garrick. Garrick. Alexander Siddig cannot be upset to save his life on Deep Space Nine. But there is a very specific range that Alexander Siddig has when he is playing Julian Bashir, and outside of that, he's trying, but it's just like, that's embarrassing. Julian Bashir's angry voice, it always gets me every time it happens. But that's one of those examples of just like, I see the actor, I just see him. But then you show me, John Alamino playing Gul Dukat, and I'm just like, that's Gul Dukat. I don't see anybody else. Or Weyoun, Combs, he is all in it. And so is Alexander Siddig, as long as they don't try to get Julian Bashir to act angry. But yeah, they're going back to what I was talking about earlier. I think it's interesting to dissect those core concepts and figure out what a person actually likes about something. Because it's usually never the scene wholesale. It's something about how it's been made. So that even something that's poor, there's usually something inside of it that you can pull out and hold on to a specific idea or core concept. And make it your own. The again, going back to Sonic Generations, the idea of a void null space. that contains areas, you know? It doesn't have to be in the specific context that Sonic Generations puts it in. It just, it's in reality, they framed it in a specific way, but the core of it is a vague idea. You don't need to carry the imagery with it necessarily, just the feeling of the concept and figuring out what it is. But yeah, just like summarizing that, I feel like that's what, you know, makes someone look at something and just like, oh, I don't care about that, I'm not interested, because they see it, they see another person's interest as a YouTube clip, you know, as a scene that you browse through, and not looking for and dissecting a core concept from it that can be used for something else, you know? There's usually a chance to learn from something, you know? Yeah. And the other thing that for me helps to write is just watching people in real life, not like in an eerie way, but just, you know, just having an open senses to what's going on around you. And today in particular, maybe today in particular was a bit more specific than that, but I can think of a few things today that come to mind. And I wrote notes on it while it was happening, and most of them just made me sad. But like tomorrow is my birthday. I didn't know that because I completely forget, and I never know when my birthday is until like one of two people is just like, it's your birthday tomorrow, and I'm like, really? What is today? And then I'll oh, you're right, it is tomorrow. It's because, you know, I've never really had much in the way of birthday parties or anything like that. And like holidays and birthdays, there's no one to really celebrate it with, or anything like that. I'm just here by myself when those things happen. I mean, even tomorrow with my birthday, I'm just gonna be here by myself. And that's you know, that's gonna be the extent of it. I'm just gonna be here by myself, probably doing what I always do, and that'll be it. But like little moments, like the other person dropped by and they brought me in a cake, but it's the cake that they like, and again, it's always an opportunity for just like weird, so like something out of Cheers or Frasier, or, you know, characters coming up with ideas for characters. You know, the person appeared, they bought a cake, says, you know, it's a tradition, I do this every year, and then it's the cake that they like for their birthday. And then the person said to me, this is my favorite, so I know you'll like it too. And I'm just thinking to myself, you don't know what my favorite birthday cake is, do you? You don't know my preferred cake, you don't. So you just, similar to the presents where you buy something you want and then you give it to me and then you get it because I have no use for it. You bought your own birthday cake, said it was my birthday cake, tried to convince me that I like it so that you can have it, because you didn't want to get the cake that I enjoy, but also you probably don't even know the specific cake that I like. It's its own character moment. That is something I realized the other day. This is a complete side tangent. Is just realizing how much I accepted it as normal. The person not being there for Gon at all. That for me, the exceptional behavior was them completely ignoring his suffering or existence in conversation. But it didn't even dawn on me the fact that the person, it is unusual, it's not normal that they were ignoring his suffering or condition or, existence anyway, in a more total sense, while he was alive. Like, it gives me like a feeling of a scene in Columbo where he's like, when you heard that he had been poisoned, instead of running, you didn't even get your stomach pumped. You came right over, just like the police asked. That's the darndest example of good citizenship I've ever seen. That kind of thing. Where he goes through like, wait, hold on a sec. Let me analyze human behavior here. Let me take a second. Just like, okay, you heard the guy was poisoned. Instead of going to a doctor to check if you were poisoned, you came right over. Or the other one where he's talking to the lady and it's like, you have no conscience. You can't imagine anyone being any different than the way you are. You have no conscience. Limits your imagination. That kind of thing. You can't imagine anyone being any different than who you are or what you are. That. I don't remember the exact line, but things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wait a minute. He's sick and dying and in poor health, and you don't call about him. You don't even call off the day, half a day, a quarter of the day, or even an hour to come see him. You don't get involved in any of his treatment or medication. You barely call. You don't really even call at all until like the next morning. And why am I only finding the tip of the iceberg strange of the behavior? Like, hold on, let me zoom out for a second and realize this is odd. This is not the behavior of someone who cares about this being or this creature. For one, constantly rescheduling, appointments that he needs, or trying to find a reason to not take him, and then not showing up or like coming to look at, that kind of thing. And even then, I know it's a side tangent, but that's its own form of writing, is figuring out character motivations and reasons and character thought patterns and processes and things like that, like figuring out, like, wait a minute, let me expand here for a second. What and who is the character in specific? Who is the person, and then real life, and then translating that into a story. What is the character? What do all these things point to or say about the sorry, Ken. My elbow. I didn't mean to do that. What does all this say about the character in specific? And they see the world. And, yeah. And it made me think about things while I was working at that job today. I started paying more attention, and I wrote down that there was one that really bothered me today, and it's something, where I work, you see all kinds of people and different interactions, but this one in particular really, really bothered me. It was a father turning on his children. And it's very disturbing to me to see parents suddenly turn on their children, or that just gets me to no end. And I wrote it down: father turning on his daughter after she tries to play sneak up on him and go, "Boo, did I scare you?" And you can tell she treats this as a common sign of affection and love. This isn't the first time that she's done it. Excuse me. This isn't the first time that she's done it, and you can tell she expects a certain reaction. But instead, he just like scowls at her and shows complete indifference and annoyance, and not even like a, "Oh, not right now," or, "Oh, I'm sorry," like, "Wait, we gotta save that for later," or, "Oh, we can't go scaring people in public," like a fatherly reprimand, or a quick like, "No, no, no, we can't do that," or, "Come on, we can't be doing that in public," something like that. But no, it was just complete indifference and resentment and anger towards her. Just like annoyed at her existence. And I know in some cases people say like, "Oh, you're just projecting." It's like, no, it really was. Like I kept my ear open. I know I'm being snoopy, and I know it's snoopy and nosy, but I thought it was interesting, and I just kept listening, and I'm like, oh, it's completely, and just seeing that, it reminds me of like when I was talking about the cats the other day. And again, I'm not like projecting or doing anything on that, but it is related. It is possible to see the same thing elsewhere in other places. And I've seen lots of where I've been. I've seen lots of kids, and I've seen parents get upset at their kids, and I've seen and there are lots of different styles, and none of them have been like this. It's like seeing a ghost, and everyone else has their own styles. Like, oh, okay, yeah, the child's mistreating. Like today, I saw an older guy like snatch a fork out of his wife's hand, and then like slam it on the table and treat her like a baby. And it was like, okay, they don't all do that. and I'm just like thinking of these different interactions as they're going, and I see this, and it's like the father is completely turned on his daughter in this moment, like resentment and anger and complete just indifference to her existence at this moment, and she's looking up at him and waiting for some kind of response that she's been response that she's become accustomed to, and it's just gone. It's just not there, and you can see the confused look on her face, just looking up at him, waiting for him to like do it, and it just wasn't there. Whatever she was looking for, it just wasn't there. And it was like, that's familiar. Familiar enough. I can recognize this kind of moment. She sees this as like affection and love, and not even a lecture or reprimand, just nothing was coming. And later the man refused to hold his child's hand, and yelled at his wife like, "No, you hold his hand." Like genuinely angry and resentful and upset at the prospect of having to hold his child's hand just because his wife asked him to. And it was like a whole thing. It was like, ugh, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting interaction. That's its own story. That's its own story right there. And I don't want to assume anything about the person, those people right there. Save assumptions for writing a fictional person, Save what you think could be happening for the fictional person. but just this little fragment, this little slice, this little piece of these people's lives, just left a big impression. It's like only seeing a minute of a movie, but it's the most intense part of the movie, and then you go thinking like, oh, that's interesting. And then oh, this one got me. This one got me really good, and I wrote down the line, "Sometimes life is a cartoon, and I love that it writes itself sometimes." And it was these two girls, and they kind of talk like this. They had the, not even kind of, that is how they talk. Like, I was just doing this so and so, and like, and then I was like, and then it's like a stereotype, literally cartoon characters in real life, and I wrote down some of the things, and they were talking about homeless people, and they were really talking down about homeless people or people in poverty, and they were kind of bouncing between the different, like, they have a home but they're in poverty, they're homeless, destitute, and they said things like you're homeless. Who told you could have a preference? Like, who said you could have a preference? They're homeless people. They need, like, food, right? Don't they need to eat? Why are you having preferences? There was this one lady who asked me for money, and I went and bought her food instead, and she got mad at me. Like, what do you mean? I bet she was just trying to take my money. I don't know. Like, who are you to choose? You're homeless. Don't you just take what you can get? And then immediately afterwards, they started talking about My Little Pony and Twilight. Immediately. And then they talked about Twilight and My Little Pony. They talked about Cadence. Had a little discussion about how her actual name is Miyamori Cadenza. We're talking about why was she born in Alicorn? Why is Luna smaller than Celestia? Talked about shipping characters and how they stopped watching Twilight after Eclipse because of the weird love triangle. And they didn't watch New Moon. And it was just... I was thinking to myself, like... most people don't have interesting things to say. And I don't begrudge people for talking about really, like, what's the word? Benign? Just like, really almost like throwaway things. I hesitate to use the word throwaway because it's like, what are you supposed to talk about anyway with someone you like hanging around with all the time? Politics? Philosophy? It's like, no, eventually you're just going to start talking about, TV shows or random little things or a headline or, little factoids or just coming up with little things. But when you start talking about the choices of and rights of homeless people to decide stuff, then it's like, and then immediately switch to talking about My Little Pony and Twilight. It's like you have become a character now. You are now a character. You have now caught my attention. You have now become someone I didn't think could be real. If that makes any sense. You have expanded my horizons to the complexities of human beings and just like and just the ways that a mind can work. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm grateful. I'm going to save that for later. But the moving on from that. something that I thought about today was the idea, and this is partly, to do with character writing and things like that. Hold on, I wrote down some notes a while ago that'll help me get through this. Let me search this. Hold on. I want to check what it's called. What is it called when someone was forced to mature super fast or never developed a part of their personality and it comes out as childish later and they have to mature it in older age? Thank you, Google. Can you give me... no. A certain part of their personality. Hold on. It's gotta be somewhere. And parts of their personality still need to be matured. Oh. I don't know what it is called. Regression, it's an unaddressed part from childhood. What? I'm gonna look it up one more time, and then I'm just gonna go with the definition without the word, and then maybe someone maybe someone somewhere or something can help me figure out what exactly it's called. What is it called when someone has a part of their personality they never got to mature? Because they grew up too fast and have to mature it as an adult. Okay, I got one more solution. I'm going to ask Copilot because it's much better at these sort of odd... What is it called? No. I am a human. I am a human. Please let me through. I want to search the thing. Thank you. Okay. What is it called when someone has a part of their personality that they haven't matured because they were forced to grow up fast, and when they reach adulthood, that part comes out and it's the same as it was when they were adults. No, children, and they have to mature it has in adult. Okay, let's see. Mm-hmm. Arrested Development. There it is. Yeah. Okay. I think. Yeah. Okay. In adulthood, when life becomes safer, those unmet developmental needs finally surface. Arrested emotional development. Okay. There we go. Found it. Okay. I was thinking about that today, specifically in relation to crying. And I was thinking to myself, I figure it's no matter who it is, it's good to cry at any stage of life if you can, because I figure, you know, you you suppress all that, it never develops, it never matures. You suppress all that, it never develops, it never matures, and then you grow up into an adult, and suddenly you cry, and it's like it's as if, you can be mature in many areas and well adjusted, and then that one part, you didn't address, it's still as it was when you were a child. It hasn't updated with the rest of you, and you cry, and you end up taking and processing sadness and things like that as a child would, or baby like, immature. It's more. I figure it's okay, and it's actually very good to cry through each stage, because each time you do, you develop it a little more, it matures a little more, and the shape it takes, you learn how to process the emotions differently, and some subconscious intrinsic part of you knows, cries in a more mature way. I feel like that's why that stereotype of like the man seeing a scene in something and then he starts wailing and blubbering like a baby. I'm sure there's some guys who, he's emotional, so no matter what, that's just how it is. But I feel like for a lot of people, whether they're men or women, it's because they just never matured and built up and evolved their ability to cry, their sadness, and things like that. And I know because that happened to me. That happened. That is still happening to me. There are so many areas I recognize where I have no one to compare to. I have no one to, and this is something I talked about before, that I thought was really, really strong in Takopi's original sin, when Shizuka was talking about, like, do I smell? People tell me I do, but where? Nobody told me. Nobody would let me know. Nobody would help me. It's like that question of, I don't know anything. What do I do? What is wrong? What is not necessarily wrong, but what is wrong? What isn't necessarily wrong? What is positive? What is negative? What is right? Things like that. Like, not knowing what you're doing, you have no. Well, what do I do? And there are so many things like that in my life where I really have to take a second to think, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it this way? how am I doing this? I've gotten used to it, and there's no one or nothing to really, like, there were things that I had no idea about the way I was doing them before I got my kittens, and then they naturally took a part of me and matured it as I had to take care of them. But I feel like there are so many other things that I just never got raised on. You know, I'm missing something. There's a part that's not there, or I'm still in that undeveloped mode in regards to it. And I remember it was really like that when it came to sadness and crying and tears and things like that for me, like especially before learning how to set boundaries and things like that. Like, that was something I learned how to do, and it helped to update and mature a part of me pretty quick. But before, it was like getting caught up in the other person's schemes and plans and manipulations and hooks and framing, and then like thinking it had to be an argument, and it was like kid-like. And that was something especially surprising from the other person, when I finally, like, the other person had literally framed their lives into a form where they would never have to mature, because they didn't want to, admit. And that's something I learned a lot about narcissism, is that, I read that sometimes it can be genetic, and then other times it can be learned, and then other times it's a mix of both, or sometimes there's a predisposition, but that it can be activated easily. And unfortunately, the other person, what I have end up dealing with is a mix of like antisocial personality disorder mixed with narcissism. I mean, somewhere on that slide of I know they're not actual medical terms, but sociopathy and psychopathy, just antisocial. That's the official term for it. Somewhere on that slide, that mixes of both traits. I wouldn't even call it a slide. I would call it dynamic. It's got little bits and pieces of each thing mixed with narcissism. And one thing I didn't recognize when I was younger was just how childish the other person really was. Like absolutely throwing tantrums and all kinds of stuff. And it was like all of a sudden a baby was in front of me. But I also realized no, this person has literally built up a life where this stuff, if it comes up, is treated as adult in their mind, and they try to reframe it, redefine it as being adult and mature, when it isn't at all. The person still has to take responsibility for themselves and their own actions. And yes, you can character, you can understand where it comes from, but that's no excuse for it to continue. There comes a point where it's like you've been let know at this point, and you are now accountable for those decisions and things, and whatever you do. And but then I realized, and especially when I started setting boundaries, the person, it really was just like a child coming out all of a sudden. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with something that is one big self-defensive you know, arrested development scenario all in front of me all at once that is propping itself up and making sure that it can't, continue to mature. It will literally deny all else to try and sustain its existence. So, that's its own thing, but I was just thinking about that. And even me talking a little while ago about learning how to not be alone, like all of this, there's so many things that I'm having to realize that I didn't make it on, I'm not there yet. And something that I thought about that really bothered me is teachers who kind of support that. When you're forced to grow up really fast, and you get mature and you're able to understand the teachers and be convenient, all of it. Because remember, teachers, while they do have a duty on paper, they're still just humans, and they'll go for ease and whatever's lack of resistance, the water flowing down, path of least resistance. But so it's almost a mistake to be like that with a teacher. You want to be a child with a teacher. You want to be your age, because then they'll teach you. But when you're more like matured in that part, in that sense of just like, like, oh, I get you, teacher, don't worry, I won't cause you any problems, and so on and so, I'll be convenient. You become convenient, you become easy, but then you don't really get taught. You're more likely, you are now ease, you're more pushed into the background, and you miss out on those skills. It's partly why you let children get to be children. It is so that they can be taught. It is easier to teach a child, and it's like clearer how to teach a child than it is how to teach an adult, if that makes any sense. It's at least from what I've observed and what I've been through. It was like, for me, I was that student who like, oh, thank you, you make things so easy on me, and it's like, that's nice to hear, I'm glad I make it convenient, but then I realized that now I'm pushed into the background as noise. I'm the student the teacher's like, oh, I don't got to do anything for you, you got this, right? You're self-sufficient, I know you can do it, that kind of thing. And they just kind of like leave you be to go teach the other students, if and then I realized, like, that was a mistake. That was a mistake, because now I'm missing out on the skills. The teacher doesn't know what I have or what I don't have, or what I know or what I don't know, or what I've learned or what I haven't learned. All they know now is that on some surface level I'm mature, and that makes me convenient, that makes me easy, and that they don't have to keep their eye on me. Or put the efforts on. But now they're going to go put the efforts on what makes them a teacher, which is to go teach the ones who aren't convenient. But now they're going to get taught. And those same students are going to go learn social skills and build relationships and learn what different emotions and feelings feel like, and how to navigate different situations, and grow support networks and communicate. And then meanwhile, like, at least for me, I'm not going to put this on everyone who's like that, but at least for me, it's like, I'm no one to talk to. I feel like an outsider to everybody. I'm not even in the same mindset as everybody else. And now the other person, they took that as a sign of superiority. because of course they did. They very much had to believe. They couldn't believe that something negative was happening to them because it would make them feel inferior. So they took their ultra fast tracked upbringing as a sign of superiority, to look down on other kids. And that person would even use it as like a condescending thing on me sometimes, like, you just need space to learn how to be a kid. You just need to learn how to be a child again. You're a child, so go ahead and be a child. It's completely condescending and patronizing. It's turning a good thing into a bad thing. But that's because that person can't really accept that they completely lost that and didn't have it, and missed actual, real maturity because of it. Not that there isn't maturity in the other thing, but there's a depth to maturity. And yes, there's a surface level maturity, but there is not anything much deeper below that. If anyone, were to get to know you, or who you are as a person, it's a pretty shell, it's a pretty veneer, but below that there's not. It's a child. Below that there is a child. A child who still has this overwhelming sense of superiority and grandiosity and self-righteousness to their, like, every action and behavior. Everything that happened made me better than everybody else, sort of thing. I don't know how exactly to explain it, but I mean, even a lot of that antisocial mixed with narcissism, it just, like, it gets cemented in childhood. That immaturity, that actually this is what makes me better than everybody else. And not even for a second can I admit that something bad was going on here, or this was a mistake, because then it makes me feel weak and inferior, and like I'm not on the hierarchy, like I don't have power, that kind of thing. But it's like, no, you need to let children be children so that they can become adults. Trying to turn children into adults just leaves you larger children with older looking shells. And I'm not talking about people who stay children and never grow up. People who are whiny and grow up to be whiny and bratty and entitled. There's a difference between being a child and being spoiled, if that makes any sense. That's not being a child or being childish. That's just being spoiled. There's a big difference. It just happens to, coincide with a good chunk of childhood, but it just continues into adulthood. But yeah, that's its own thing. And I wrote down something from something else I interacted with in the past, and I thought it was really interesting. The character it seems like it's kind of like when someone finds out they're childish in a certain area because they haven't addressed that particular behavior since they were a child. Same with a thought. It's like a game you set down and haven't played, and then you go back to years later. And you realize you set it down and never touched it since. Now suddenly you're confronted with where your progress left off. And you can't reset the game, but you're not sure where you were. One drive or save file that hasn't been updated. The character Robin is like that in One Piece. She was forced to mature super fast, so her imagination is stuck as a child's drawing. And when she draws, it looks like crayon scribbles. But in a general sense, she is the most quote unquote adult member of the crew. Sometimes, moments in the story, she incidentally confronts something that she has never developed since childhood. One of them is that she'll just say stuff that's really morbid, but it's just her curiosity. When she's really comfortable around people, she'll share her thoughts, but her thoughts will be like, I wonder what it would be like to be torn to pieces and digested by a giant spider. Would I even retain consciousness long enough to experience it? Would my heart be tasty? What does a human heart taste like? Now I'm curious. How tender is it? Maybe that's why people say tender-hearted. It's cannibalism. And meanwhile, everyone has all these images in their minds, and now she's scared them. She'll also go with whatever nickname Luffy gives someone and will never address them with their normal name again. Like Pineapple Head. And I wrote that down because, like, of all the characters, I think she's really interesting. Because when she confronts those moments where she meets something that she hasn't tapped into since childhood, like when Luffy saves her, like, she genuinely just throws a tantrum until Luffy's just like, be quiet, I'm saving you. But she's like genuinely like throwing a fit, like a very angry fit. It's very kid-like. Or when she cries, it's genuine, like sobbing, blubbering, like a little kid would do. Like the other characters, when they cry, there's more of it's more controlled, it's more focused, it's more, it has a more developed sense to it, more, I guess you could say mature-like, when they cry. Not like, real man's tears or anything like that, or a dignified lady's cry. But there's a clear difference between when the other characters cry versus when Robin cries. When Robin cries, it's like wailing, cry, like downpours of tears, childlike vocalizations and calling out and yelling, and there's like, it's like she can't control, there's a part of it that she has like a ton of trouble controlling, and it's because that is child her, in terms of development, coming out, because she hasn't, she's suppressed all that for so long, she never actually developed it. And so she's meeting herself exactly where she was the last time that she picked it up and experienced it, which I think is really super duper interesting. But I'm debating now. When I started this whole thing, I just wanted to talk about my cool Western my cool Western story. And a couple of the things that I've written. Now I'm debating, do I make this extra long? Or do I just talk about that tomorrow? But I kind of wanted to talk about Metroid tomorrow. So maybe I'll just make this an extra long one. And if anyone bothers to listen through it all, they'll have something nice in the background. I don't even know if this is something you can play in the background. I don't want to get too self-deprecating, so I think I'm just going to move on and talk about what I originally set out to talk about, instead of all the other things that I started talking about. But, let me think for a second. Been going for a while. Let's see. It was awful. I had something in my mind as an addition that I wanted to talk about, and I completely forgot it thinking about the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Can I remember what it was. Because I've been saying a lot of things. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to think of it, so I'm just going to move on to the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was themes, because I was going to start talking about my westerns. I'm going to start that now. But for me, themes, don't care much about starting off with them. For me, I just write, and then I'll keep going, and I try to keep consistency and problem solve the script and the writing, and making sure the story is really as interesting as I can think of, and that the characters are tight. And if a theme if a theme emerges, it emerges, that kind of thing. For me, that's best for me. I think I've already said enough to indicate I'm kind of the kind of person who starts off on a small level and then figures out the system in between, from the bottom to the up to the top, or figuring out, if I do start from the top, it's how the top connects to the bottom and the lower level, and figuring out relationships and systems and like key things that inform other things and form the cog in the machine. But for me, because of that, for me, themes are a bit too vague and too big, and I'm just not interested in all that. So for me, it sets the story way too early. I kind of want it to grow and see what happens first. So I'll just start writing from a basic premise or story idea, and I'll just try to keep consistency and character motivation, and pretty much by the end there's like an I feel like, for me, I have an internalized structure for how things work and go, and how the flow is, and it's about time, like, this moves, and the pacing on this is good. All right, now this is going a little too long, maybe we'll cut a bit here, and this part is this long, so we'll put a little transition scene, that way they're more balanced out, that kind of thing. And for me, if a theme emerges, then the theme emerges. If there's symbolism and imagery, it's like, it wasn't really my concern, unless there's an in-narrative point to the symbolism and the imagery, as in a character in the story itself is considering symbolism and imagery, as in it's a very purposeful narrative tool, as in there's a scene that's meant to be explicitly narratively symbolic, not to the viewer but to the character, in a story sense, that kind of thing. And for me, I just leave the whole theme thing be, and usually by the end, it'll be like, so there is a theme. A theme emerged. I went back and read it. Can say there is a theme. There is a through line. It worked out, and it's usually something that like for me, I don't really like watching shows necessarily for themes. I will take a super simple theme. For me, if I do a theme, I will take a super simple theme, thought out with depth, complexity, and clarity, over some complex complex philosophical statement of a theme, taken to the only the most shallow exploration. It's like, but I don't go watch things for themes, because a lot of the time themes, you get caught up in, I gotta make the theme now, and then you spend all the energy is spent in thinking how to make the theme, so you end up thinking you've written something depthful, But really, all that feeling of effort and energy and time wasn't in making something depthful. It was just in like making scaffolding out of toothpicks and gum to try and get it into the shape of whatever your theme is, you know? You haven't really like built a building or laid a foundation. You've just sort of like built around the idea, but it feels big because you just spent a lot of time on it, you know? It's the idea that, you know, amount of tiredness and loss of energy equates to amount of progress and an actual depth achieved in the work of whatever you're doing. Which, for me, I don't think, for me, that doesn't work. I just, it's not how my brain works. I'm sure there are people, though, who work very well with theme and things like that. But there are so many things that I've seen specifically. Now, there are a lot of things I've seen with theme and things like that that really, really just like perfect. Even stories where the theme is you can tell the theme was the core of it all, and the person found a theme and then built around it. And then ones where you can tell that they were writing a story and then found ways to interweave theme. For me, I mainly just do write it, problem solve it, go for character consistency, things like that. And a theme will emerge on its own. And then sometimes if I think I have something clear enough or I can do it, I will write, you know, do all that stuff I mentioned, and then interweave, if I see there's space for it, a theme into that, you know, mainly to sharpen and concentrate and hone myself in a new direction. If I see like, actually, if I do that, it's gonna take what I have, and I think it's gonna really what's the word? It's gonna focus it. It's gonna shoot it in a whole new creative direction. It's gonna give me brand new ideas, fresh new ideas, and then so on, problem solving, writing, keeping things consistent, making sure things are interesting, watching pacing, and then another place to intertwine, interweave a theme. But it's a bit of a bouncing like that for me, and I've seen other writers, other people who write things and things like that. They do that as well, and I think there's really nice places for all those styles. But there are so many shows that I've seen where theme becomes the stumbling block that just it can be so great for so long, and then theme just becomes the thing that trips it right when it matters most. You know, whatever it is, it just got too into its own head about something, and they got so distracted by theme that they forgot to solve the problem or create or end up creating a new problem only to serve theme without thinking about the repercussions of what that would do. So in essence, not finding a solution. Creating, I think the best way I could say it, like, there are instances where a problem is created, and there are instances where a problem is created by not finding the solution, if that makes any sense. Like, it shouldn't have continued. Like it wasn't a problem until it continued. But it's not like it was a problem that was created, but it wasn't a problem at the time. It's something that became a problem but was already created, but the fact that it wasn't solved made it a problem, if that makes sense. And there are so many shows like that where and movies or shows where they just got so preoccupied with that kind of stuff that they lost the plot, just completely lost track of what they were doing. The wasted a ton of time on things that went absolutely nowhere, or almost like belittled or mocked the people watching for expecting it, even though they went out of their way to never show it or waste just spent all the time wasting time. And it's just like, that always stinks, because you invest, you spend a long time just like looking at whatever it is, trying getting into it, and then it's just like, no, it's all out the window. Sorry. That just makes me sad. That makes me very, very sad. But anyway, I wanted to talk about... I started this whole thing because I just wanted to talk about my writing, which I still... Now I've denied myself the opportunity to share it. So I'm just gonna sit down and talk about it. Let's see. Let's see here. What do I have? Old screenplays, old and new. Oh yeah, there was a 54-hour film festival where we all had to write down just random ideas and prompts. I don't know if the other people who my old classmates would want me to read there, so I'll just read mine. Let's see. Holiday or vacation film. The holiday for this idea is a Cyber Monday type holiday. A corporation tries to increase sales by upgrading their electronics discount day into a Christmas-like. They hire some guys in a boardroom to come up with the logistics, like the songs, mascot, and like general aesthetic. But the whole affair becomes awkwardly ritualistic when they look to the ancient festivals of yesteryear for inspiration. Let's see. Oh wow, I guess I must have really not written much. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. I'm sorry, I'm having all this fun without saying anything. June. I forget. I forgot about this. A sitcom or soap opera. Generic Hallmark schlock, but the main hubby is Solid Snake. Our love is the one thing to surpass Metal Gear. That's funny. Oh, okay. I got another one. It's a Western, and it was called All's Quiet on the New Frontier. And the joke is that it's a Western, but the entire thing is an ASMR. So the cowboys, they're like, I ain't seen you from around this town. Howdy there, stranger. You ain't from round these parts, are you? And then like takes a sip of the drink. and then The entire thing is an AS, and they pull the mics down so they can get it right next to their mouths. Just swish the ice around, and then they go out and they have their duel, and they like very slowly and deliberately drop the bullets into the barrels, into the revolver barrels, like, you know, you hear every click. spitting the and then shaking the gun around, hearing the little clatter, and then like the sound of it going into the holster. And then one of them getting shot and then falling over to the ground, and then he pulls the mic down really close to his mouth and gives his final monologue. Just that's the whole thing. Okay. These are all ideas of like 54-hour film festival, and you have to make something that's 5 minutes long. Keep in mind, you have 54 hours. That's about 2 days to come up with something and make a film. Let's see, I'm checking if there's slapstick or dark comedy. A jester has a conversation with a hiding dictator on the eve of a revolution that is looking... I read that. A jester has a conversation with a hiding dictator on the eve of a revolution that is looking to execute him and all his associates. Let's see. A group discovers old footage from a backyard film they were putting together years ago. It turns out that they are missing tape, and the tape right after it suddenly jumps to the most dramatic part of the story without context. So they, as adults, recreate what they think what the lost part was. I really like that idea. Them reuniting again and putting the lost piece of the backyard film that they were making. Let's see, what else do I have? A person, sci-fi or heist. A person tries to steal ideas for a science fiction novel from another author by going through the other person's notes and drafts. Along the way, someone catches that person, but they end up working together to pull it off because they're both pretty shallow and petty, but in an endearing way. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh. Monster or alien. A person has a conversation with the monster that lives under their bed and the monster that lives in their closet. That's cute. Let's see. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh yeah, a buddy or a road film. And my contribution was a documentary about a road. I know that sounds silly, but I do think that could be very compelling and interesting. Literally, just finding a really interesting road and just finding all the interesting and just like the history, weird history of all the things that have gone down on this specific road and how it got its name, and just like the lives of the people who drive over this road and who uses it commonly, and things like that. That could be very interesting, I think, if that was pulled off. Ooh, a documentary or satire. It looks like I named it Civil Heating and Electric, a mockumentary looking back on the anniversary of the death of a fictional social activist, highlighting big speeches and events that took place while he was alive, and people taking seriously all the dumb stuff he says with a straight face, with interviews with his opponents and followers. Let's see. Is there anything else on this? No. There isn't anything else on this. Okay, I'm building up. I'm getting back to the Western idea. I'm slowly moving my way there. Let's see. Character sheet. Screenplay format template. 54-hour scenarios. 54-hour scenarios 2024. 54-hour scenarios 2023. Let's see. Ooh. Tour across postcards. A tired person comes home from work, finally taking vacation time, but not knowing where to go or what to do. The person has never been on vacation before, and so pulls out a file of novelty postcards from different places, events, situations, and contexts. The person has vivid daydreams of experiencing what's on each postcard. You know what's funny is most of these are probably smaller scenes I would put in bigger things that I actually like, but I don't think I would actually specifically like to make, except for maybe one or two of these ideas, I don't think I would actually want to make these on my own. They're just completely out of my... I think I would slowly just fizzle out trying to make these kinds of things. Some of these ideas. Oh, okay. Just making sure everything's good here, Ken. Like some of them, like there was one I wanted to make. It was a screenplay about a mayor, and it had like political thing, but it was one of those things that I had to let go because I realized like there's nothing for me in this. This isn't anything I want to continue with, or this isn't quite this isn't it. And you know what? It really helps. It did what I talked about before and became all that effort and energy and guilt I spent on something that I never really had any heart in or wanted to work on. It turned into fertile ground. All that energy and time and drive turned into fertile ground for the next thing, which ended up going very well, I think. But, let's see. Oh, yeah! Horror or suspense. I made two of these. One is called Sanran, Sanran. A mysterious thing appears to a person and gives them an egg. The egg is attached to the person, and the creature gives them an ominous warning. Should the egg be removed, damaged, or lost before a certain amount of time has passed, something bad will happen. The egg does weird things, because it definitely should. And then the other one is called Tempeneer. The main protagonist one day feels the temperature begin to rise, and like things are getting hotter. It starts out small, but gradually the feeling of heat gets worse and worse each day. The main character struggles to try and find ways to cool down, and figure out if anyone else is experiencing this. No matter what the main character does, they never feel like they are cooling off. Ice bath, cold temperatures, nothing. It begins to take a toll as this incessant heating up continues. Let's see, was there anything else on this? Oh, that's kind of funny. This one is coming of age. Two friends don't understand what coming of age is supposed to mean, or if an arbitrary number This is funny. This is me. What is that? 3 years ago, asking the questions that today I'm finding the answers to, or at least more of the answers to. Two friends don't understand what coming of age is supposed to mean, or if an arbitrary number qualifies someone as an adult or ready for a relationship. One of them has been grown up since childhood and doesn't quite get how everyone seems to act just as immature as they did before, or even dumber. The other tries to follow along but doesn't quite get it conceptually past the social political aspects and benefits of it. That's funny. Yeah. I guess even then I was asking that question. Well, I would definitely be able to help myself better if it came down to it. And post-apocalypse. A woman runs the last ice cream shop post-end of the world out of her place. Warlords, police, ruffians, and hooligans all flock to her place to experience the only taste of dessert that they can possibly have. Ah, nice. Let's see, did I have anything else? Oh. A creator has her character die and replaces it with another that follows the same routine. She wonders why she writes stories in which her characters suffer and die. Contemplating the worth of stories and the expendability of her creations, she examines how she processes something fictional dying and why it even dies. In other words, her motivations for killing it, in quotes, in the first place. She has a conversation with her creation, eventually attempting to bring the character, quote-unquote, back to life. That's a lot. Let's see. Is there anything else? Oh, I forgot. I forgot about this one. A cold breeze on summer. After a forgotten buried nuclear device was accidentally detonated, creating massive cold winds and altering the weather for over a decade, the world has finally neared healing as environments become more hospitable again. An impoverished girl named Summer buys a house for cheap in the middle of nowhere, as its previous tenant, an elderly vagabond, was kicked out. At the same time, the government sends a commissioned agent to scope out rumors of buried armaments in the area. Summer moves into her house, not comprehending the dangerous munitions and explosives buried under it, potentially nuclear. The agent arrives and investigates. Eventually, the two meet, with Summer being annoyed by the agent's intrusive meddling. She refuses to leave despite the danger. The agent discovers the vagabond's old bed to have been the casing of the bomb as the cushion, but the warhead is missing, and so departs to look for it. Eventually, Summer finds an old gift box that the old vagabond was looking for. The old woman calls it her good luck charm. The box has the warhead inside of it. The warhead ends up activating, and the agent must lead Summer through disarming it over a phone call. It's a bit much for a 54-hour film. Let's see. Was there anything else? Oh! I forgot about this idea. It is called The Dissections of Belle Broomstick. A sort of period piece. This is for slapstick or dark comedy. A sort of period piece in a gothic era, doesn't have to be, in which a retired executioner and autopsy surgeon by the name of Broomstick decides that he, or could be a female lead, no longer has the desire to live after the angst of his or her previous profession. He or she decides to simultaneously plan his or her death and to make up a bit of regret by becoming a proto-therapist/psychiatrist for the most volatile, violent, and on-the-edge people he or she can find. He or she hopes one day that maybe one of them will finally snap. Oh, I forgot about that. He or she hopes one day that maybe one of them will finally snap, or something like a suppressed killer personality will finally emerge and kill him or her. Until then, he or she does the world a favor by sorting out the violent tendencies of the monsters and killers and keeping records and anecdotes of the interactions. So basically, this person has decided that the only way that they want to end their life is by purposely putting themselves in a situation where someone volatile will take them out, and until then, he or she is riding the danger of being there. Because this is supposed to be like a period piece, so it's before the profession of therapists and psychiatrists. So this person is the joke is that the person is leading the way for therapy and psychiatry through planning their attempted self-offing, self-destruction by purposely sitting in a room with highly dangerous and unstable criminals and monsters and killers, hoping that one of them will have the tendency or the urge that will find that will put out of their misery. That's awful. Put out of their misery. Oh. Okay. You know what? I think I will talk about the things I wanted to talk about that Western tomorrow. I think I'll just go through the rest of these story ideas I had, just so that they're on record, and I'll save Metroid for Tuesday. Oh, bag of daydreams. Two friends find and watch the tape/videos left by a girl they used to terrorize and bully during their childhoods. Yeah, for most of these, I tried to make it something within our means that we had, minus, nuclear bombs, and that other one, that was just they find the footage and accidentally... Two friends find and watch the tape/videos left by a girl they used to terrorize and bully during their childhoods. They find the footage when they accidentally stumble on her old hiding place. The tapes are a kind of diary of her random thoughts, experiences, fantasies, stories, and wishes. Afterwards, they try to find her to return them to her. Oh. Maybe I'll talk about that one tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to talk about that one tomorrow. I'm definitely going to talk about that one tomorrow. Okay, let's see. I think I'm going to stop here and call this a part 1. And then tomorrow I will continue on. This has gone on this might be my longest journal.